Part 1. Something caught my eye the moment I walked in. I'd left the lights off, only a thin shaft of morning sun spilled across the bathroom floor. I paused, worried I might step on something sharp. Vanessa, my wife, hadn't mentioned dropping anything, but it wouldn't be the first time a small object ended up in the wrong place. When I knelt down, I realized the glint came from a round foil circle, about the size of my pinky's tip. It looked familiar, the kind of backing left behind when you push out a pill. One side was blank, but the other read too. That detail made me pause. Today was Wednesday, which meant that foil should have covered Tuesday's pill. I wasn't on any prescriptions at 35. I was healthy and took nothing beyond the occasional aspirin. Vanessa, as far as I knew, wasn't on any medication either. We'd both had recent checkups, told we were in great shape. So why would a little foil circle labeled 2 be on our bathroom floor? I tried to dismiss it as a stray piece of packaging. Maybe we dropped something without realizing. Yet a small knot of worry tightened in my gut. The only daily pills we used to have in the house were Vanessa's birth control pills. That was years back, before I had a vasectomy. The procedure came up once we decided not to have more children. Vanessa had been on the pill for years, but we eventually switched to the permanent route, my vasectomy. Afterward, she supposedly stopped taking birth control altogether. But now I was holding Tuesday's foil from a daily pill pack. A chill spread through me. If she was still on the pill, it could only mean she was worried about getting pregnant. And if she was worried about pregnancy, that meant the vasectomy wasn't enough, or she was sleeping with someone else. In the past, I might have just asked her directly, but some instinct told me to investigate before confronting her. I've always been methodical, especially after all the nights I spent perfecting engineering designs at my firm. I needed more proof before deciding whether I was overreacting or truly had reason to be suspicious. I cleaned up, put the foil back where I found it, and made sure I left the bathroom looking exactly as it did before. Then I drove to work, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. At the office, instead of diving into new contracts, I started looking up private DNA kits and covert surveillance equipment. My thoughts had turned dark within the span of an hour, but I knew I needed clarity. If Vanessa was indeed cheating, I wanted to know, with who, for how long, and if our children, James and Sonia, were even mine. We had 2 kids, 5-year-old James and 3-year-old Sonia. I'd always believed they were my flesh and blood. Still, that doubt nagged at me. If she'd been lying about the pills, could she have lied about everything else? I ordered a series of items, discreet voice recorders, tiny cameras I could hide around the house, phone cloning software, and DNA test kits. I felt sick doing it, but I convinced myself it was necessary. I wanted unassailable facts before taking any steps that might blow up our family. Those few days waiting for delivery seemed endless. In that time, I kept a close eye on Vanessa, searching for suspicious behavior. She seemed normal, no big changes to her routine, no sudden nights away. Our intimate life was the same as ever, once or twice a week, often squeezed in before the kids woke up. She didn't rush to shower off any unfamiliar smells, nor did she wear different perfume or clothing. If she was cheating, she was doing a damn good job of covering her tracks. When Friday arrived, I got the call at work. My packages had been delivered. I'd had them sent to the office so Vanessa wouldn't ask awkward questions. That afternoon, I pretended I had a light schedule and went home early. The au pair who helped us with the kids while Vanessa and I both worked was feeding the children. With her busy, I went upstairs and installed cameras in the bathroom, living room, and bedroom, the main spaces where I suspected evidence might appear. The bathroom was crucial for seeing if Vanessa really was taking birth control pills. As soon as the kids were in bed, I used a cheek swab on each of them for the DNA kits, doing my best not to let them see what I was doing or understand the significance. They just thought Daddy was checking their cheeks with a funny Q-tip. I swabbed myself as well, then mailed the samples. The lab promised results within about 48 hours from when they received them. That evening, Vanessa came home at the usual time. We chatted about mundane things, her job, the kids, what to watch on TV. Meanwhile, I felt like a stranger in my own marriage. After she went to shower, I slipped into her car to place a voice recorder under the seat. I also cloned her phone, downloading her text messages and emails. To my surprise, there was nothing incriminating in her digital footprint, no evidence of flirting, no suspicious phone calls. That either meant I was wrong, or she was more careful than I thought. Part 2. The weekend was almost normal, at least on the surface. We did our usual routines, chores, a trip to the park with the kids, and our typical morning intimacy that felt more like a habit than anything passionate. I tried to keep a polite, relaxed front, but inside I was restless. By Monday, Vanessa headed off to work as usual, and I told her I'd be working from home to catch up on some projects. The moment she left, I removed the micro SD cards from the cameras and loaded the footage onto my computer. The bathroom footage was the first blow. Vanessa, every day, taking a small white pill at nearly the same time. It was clear. She was definitely back on the pill. My heart sank, but I forced myself to keep checking. The next shot came from the bedroom camera. On Saturday night, while I was cooking dinner, Vanessa had come out of the shower, gone to the bedroom, and typed a message on a phone I didn't recognize. Apparently, she had a second phone, a secret one that wasn't the device I had cloned. I watched as she finished typing, walked to the air conditioning vent, opened it carefully, and stashed the phone inside. I was stunned. That explained why her official phone was so clean. No suspicious texts, no calls, nothing. She kept the other device out of sight whenever I was around. I had to see what was on it. That night, after Vanessa went to bed, I checked the vent from Sonia's side, since it opened into our daughter's room. The phone wasn't there. It had to be with her. I decided to wait. A few days later, when Vanessa was showering and I heard the water running, I slipped into Sonia's room, opened the vent, and there it was, the second phone. My hands were shaking as I grabbed it, raced to my office, and cloned its contents. Adrenaline surged as I finished just in time to hear the water shut off. I barely managed to slip back into Sonia's room and pretend to be watching her sleep when Vanessa poked her head in. I played it off as fatherly affection. The next morning at my office, I finally accessed the clone data from Vanessa's hidden phone. The truth hit like a freight train. The messages were explicit, describing stolen afternoons in hotel rooms, intimate acts, and private jokes about how clueless I was. They even mentioned scheduling around my travel. The man she was seeing was never named, but I knew from the secrecy it was someone close, someone she worked with. I sat at my desk in shock, vision blurred by tears, ignoring the pings of my secretary Michelle on the intercom. Eventually, she came in, locked the door, and handed me tissues. Michelle was always all business, a few years older than me, usually reserved, but this time she just sat down and listened. I told her everything, the foil, the hidden pills, the cameras, the secret phone. I felt pathetic, but she just nodded. "Gary, we need details and a plan," she said calmly, not missing a beat. When I told her I'd even done DNA swabs on the kids, she nodded again. "Good. Find out the truth. Then decide how to act." Michelle handed me a ticket for a sudden business trip to our Portland branch. "You're leaving today and won't be back until Thursday. Trust me, Vanessa might get suspicious if you're around too much. Tell her it's an emergency. I'll handle everything here." She even texted Vanessa from my phone, making up a crisis. Vanessa replied with concern, hoping I'd be back soon. Before I left, Michelle gave me the contact for her friend Lorraine, a divorce attorney who had helped Michelle through her own messy split. That afternoon, I was sitting in Lorraine's office, still in shock. Lorraine listened, asked sharp questions, and explained my options: do nothing, file for an amicable divorce, or go nuclear with an adultery filing that could devastate Vanessa's world and block her claims to my assets. Doing nothing was out of the question. I was furious. Amicable? Why should I give up half of everything I'd built, especially if the kids weren't even mine? The answer was clear. "I want the nuclear option," I said, my voice trembling. Lorraine nodded. "All business. We'll need more evidence to make this bulletproof. That phone you cloned will be a key piece. Hand it over." I did, without hesitation. Michelle then took me to a modest hotel. She told me to shower, order room service, and stay away from the minibar. "You need to stay sharp," she insisted. "You have to plan your next moves." But my mind was racing, lost in fear and anger. My life as I knew it had just shattered. The only sliver of hope was the possibility the kids were really mine, or maybe that I jumped to conclusions. But deep down, I knew the odds were slim. The next morning, I got a text from the DNA company. My results would be ready by the afternoon. Part 3. I couldn't bring myself to look at the DNA results. Michelle, sensing my hesitation, took my phone, loaded the test results page, and frowned. "They're not up yet," she said gently, handing the phone back. "We'll check again in a few hours." Meanwhile, she reminded me I had to protect my financial future. Over 100 employees depended on me at the engineering firm. If Vanessa took me to the cleaners, the company could collapse, and all those families would suffer. That snapped me out of my haze. I forced myself to think like an engineer, strategizing each step. We went to see my longtime business attorney, Brian Spencer. He reminded me of the prenuptial agreement I'd signed before marriage, a requirement for all partners in our firm to protect against marital disputes. That prenup meant Vanessa could only target my salary and personal assets like the house and my 401k, not the company itself. Here's my advice, Brian said. Buy out your partner, Robert. He's hinted at wanting to sell anyway. Move as much of your liquid assets into the company as you can, even if it means taking a loan. That way, your money is behind a firewall she can't breach. It sounded daunting, but it was better than letting Vanessa walk away with half. I called Robert. He was blunt. Why? I told him the truth in a single, flat sentence. Vanessa's been cheating. Possibly since day one. He was sorry and agreed to sell most of his shares, keeping only 5% for consulting. We drew up the papers at lunch. Afterward, Michelle and I checked the DNA results again. This time, they were posted. She read them first, a sorrowful expression on her face. I'm sorry, Gary. My hand shook as I took the phone. Both kids were fathered by the same man, but that man wasn't me. The little boy and girl whose first steps and first words I cherished weren't mine. I felt a rage hotter than anything I'd ever experienced. Michelle's voice snapped me back. Stay focused or you'll lose everything. She got me out of the diner and back to Lorraine's office. Lorraine had her own update, a preliminary report from the private investigator. Vanessa had a man over at my house last night. They couldn't see inside, but there was clear footage of him entering, using his own key. My stomach twisted. Later, reviewing the living room camera, I saw him walk in, welcomed by her son. No, her son. Shouting, Daddy Bill. My tears came in unstoppable waves. That told me everything about the father's identity. Bill Wainwright, Vanessa's longtime boss. It hit me that this might have been going on for my entire marriage. Lorraine cross-checked the footage. Bill was a high-level executive at Vanessa's firm, subject to a strict non-fraternization policy. We can go after her company for that, Lorraine said. And after him for alienation of affection, plus your wife for any false birth certificate claims. She listed a litany of aggressive legal strategies. She was ready to go fully nuclear, just as I'd chosen. I returned to the hotel numb. That evening, Michelle showed up at my door. You shouldn't be alone. Pack up, you're coming to my place. I was too exhausted to argue. Her house was bigger than I expected, and she gave me a private room. There was no romantic vibe, just a friend making sure I wouldn't fall apart alone. The next days were a blur of action. I finalized the buyout from Robert, funneled every cent I could into the company, cashed out my 401k, penalties be damned, and refinanced the house. On paper, I now looked nearly penniless, with almost everything tied up in the company, thanks to the prenup and the timing before filing for divorce. Monday morning, Lorraine filed for divorce on grounds of adultery, fraud, and emotional distress. At the same time, she filed a lawsuit against Bill's employer for failing to enforce its own anti-fraternization policies. She had process servers deliver everything in person, one set to Bill at his office, one to the company's HR department, and one to Vanessa's desk. I watched the clock. At exactly 10 a.m., my phone pinged an email that the divorce papers had been served. The other lawsuits were served minutes later. Within 10 minutes, my phone lit up. I expected Vanessa, but it was my mother. Gary, she said, her voice sharp. I got your letter. Your father did too. Are you really doing this? Did you read it? I asked. I read it, and I don't believe it, she replied. This is Vanessa, your wife, the mother of your children. How can you just? They're not my children, I interrupted, voice flat. There was a long pause. They're yours in every way that matters, she finally said. No, I whispered, they're not. Part 4. You raised them. You've been their father since the day they were born. Are you saying that doesn't count for anything? My mom pleaded through the phone. I'm saying it was built on a lie, I replied coldly. She was breathing hard. So what? You're just walking away, like they meant nothing? You're punishing them for something Vanessa did? You don't think they're going to suffer? Because you suddenly decided you don't want to be their father anymore. What the hell are you saying? I shouted, pain twisting my gut. I don't want to lose my grandchildren over this. I won't, she insisted. Then don't, I said flatly. That's your choice. I hung up immediately. The phone rang again, Vanessa. Her voice was trembling. Gary, we need to talk. I'm coming home, she added. I said nothing and hung up. The word home felt hollow. Technically, it was still my house, but she clearly still saw it as hers, too. Michelle gave me a quick, supportive hug and stepped out, leaving me to face Vanessa alone. I waited in my office, scanning through a flood of emails from relatives who had received the disclosure packet. My father was outraged, my sister furious. The room felt suffocating. Vanessa stormed in about 20 minutes later, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen her. Gary, she began. I'm not interested, I cut her off. But, not interested, I repeated, voice icy. I don't want to hear anything from you. You've lied to me for 9 years. Neither of the kids are mine, yet you convinced me to get a vasectomy while you were still on the pill, just so you could keep your affair with Daddy Bill. Her eyes widened in shock, but I pushed on. I don't care what you have to say. My lawyer's contact info is in the packet you were served. If you have anything important to discuss, you can talk to her. What about the children? She asked, her voice cracking. What children? I replied. I don't have any children. And if it were up to you, I'd never have any. I would ask why you did this to me, but I really don't want to hear another lie. I'm done. I just want this mess over so I can pick up the pieces of my life and move on. I called the au pair into the room, knowing she was within earshot. You're fired, effective immediately. Pack your things and get out. She stared, shocked. Why? Because you were covering for her, I said, pointing at Vanessa. You knew she was sleeping with her boss. Maybe you didn't know the kids were his, but you definitely knew what was happening. I have video proof of you talking to Bill about the kids. Get out. Gary, Vanessa interjected. You can't fire her. I pay her wages. The au pair shot Vanessa a grateful look, but I cut in. I've already informed the agency that you were involved in Vanessa's affair. I won't take legal action if they remove you from their roster. So, Vanessa, if you want to keep her, you'll have to pay her directly and handle all her taxes, insurance, and leave. The agency will blackball you, and every agency in the network will know. Now get out, I ordered. The au pair's face went pale. She hurried out, knowing her career was basically over. Did you have to do that? Vanessa said, voice cracking. You're talking again. I snapped. I told you, I don't want to hear it. What I do want is for you to pack your things, take your kids, and get out of my house. This is my house, too, she protested. Not according to the paperwork, I said. It's in my name. Until the courts say otherwise, get out. She flinched at my shout. Just then, James walked in. Mommy, Sonia fell down. Vanessa, stunned and tearful, left to check on Sonia. I closed my office door and stayed inside, refusing to see them off. A few minutes later, she returned holding Sonia. Are you going to say goodbye to me? Don't even say it, I cut her off, cold as ice. She's not my daughter. He's not my son. Take them to Daddy Bill and let him take care of his own kids. They have nothing to do with me. Get out. Vanessa sobbed as she left, carrying her daughter. As soon as they were gone, I broke down completely. Michelle slipped back inside, having waited nearby. She held me while I wept, her presence a small comfort. We listened as Vanessa's car drove off. My phone buzzed over and over, but I ignored it. For the first time in a week, I wished I could just disappear. But Michelle kept me grounded, reminding me we still had steps to finalize. The HR lawsuit, locking down company finances, and so on. A few hours later, I got an email Vanessa had filed a restraining order, claiming emotional harm. The order barred me from my own house until a court hearing. It was a clear move from her lawyer, meant to show the judge she was in danger, but Lorraine was already on it, pointing out. Part 5. The judge quickly overturned Vanessa's restraining order when the court saw the evidence I'd collected. Vanessa moved in with her parents. Meanwhile, Bill's career went up in flames. His company fired him for flagrantly violating their non-fraternization policy with a subordinate, especially after it was revealed he fathered 2 children with her. Lawsuits exploded from every direction. In the end, Bill's employer settled with me for a substantial sum, and Bill himself had to pay out for alienation of affection, money that went straight to repaying my pension loan. Yet none of it really mattered to me. I was numb to the money and legal victories. The real heartbreak was losing James and Sonia. I still loved those kids, but seeing them would break me. Every time I pictured their faces, I saw Bill instead. Maybe that made me a coward, but I just couldn't handle it. Vanessa tried to use them as emotional leverage, begging me to stay in their lives, but I wasn't ready. I figured they'd forget me soon enough. Weeks dragged by. I sold the house at a loss and moved on. I had no appetite for living in a place that had become a stage for so much betrayal. For a while, I stayed in Michelle's spare room. We were polite and supportive, but there was tension between us, a silent undercurrent. At work, Michelle was the consummate professional, but outside, she seemed to constantly check on me, making sure I wasn't falling apart. The day the divorce was finalized, I was sitting at my desk. The official envelope arrived. I opened it, one signature, and I was free. Legally, I was no longer tied to Vanessa. I felt a strange mix of relief and deep sorrow. Then my phone rang. It was Michelle. Her voice was grave. "Bill Wainwright is dead," she said. "His wife found him with Vanessa again and shot him." I stared at the phone, stunned. It was a grim irony. Bill would never get to raise the two kids he'd fathered behind my back. I wasn't sure if that was justice or just another layer of tragedy, but I felt no pity for him. "Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy," I muttered. For once, Michelle didn't scold me for it. She walked into my office a minute later with an envelope. "This came for you too, the final settlement from Bill's share." The check inside was enough to pay off my loan. I was now truly free of any debt or lingering financial chains. I exhaled, sinking into my chair. My marriage was over, my illusions about fatherhood shattered, and the man who destroyed it all was dead. For the first time in months, I felt nothing. Or maybe it was just the numbness wearing off. Michelle closed the door, crossed the room, and kissed me firmly, passionately, without hesitation. When she stepped back, my heart pounded for a different reason. She smiled at my surprise. "For 9 years, I've taken care of you. You're the most decent man I've ever known, and you never once crossed a line, even when you were at your lowest. I've waited for you, Gary. If you'll let me, I want to show you, not every woman lies, and not every relationship ends in heartbreak." I thought back on all our years together. Her professionalism, her protectiveness, her fierce loyalty. Maybe I'd been too focused on holding my life together to see who'd truly been there for me. Suddenly, I remembered something my doctor once told me, that vasectomy reversals had a high success rate. Maybe fatherhood wasn't off the table after all. I smiled at Michelle, still trembling from her kiss, and asked a question that came out raw but honest. "How many kids do you think we should have?" She grinned, her eyes warm. "At least 2. But let's just see where this goes." For the first time in ages, I felt like my future was open. My old life had ended, but a new chapter was beginning. The pain would always be there. A part of me would always ache for the children I once believed were mine. But I finally had closure, legal and emotional. And I was free to rebuild, maybe this time with someone who'd stood by me through everything. Michelle kissed me again. That's where my old life ended, and a new one began, no longer weighed down by illusions or deceit. Maybe heartbreak was the price of freedom. And maybe, in the end, that was a fair trade. The end.